$90,000. That's the number she was supposed to be holding. 30 of it was supposed to come back. It didn't. 2 years later, a man walks out of a California prison on a Monday, gets on a live stream by Thursday, and by the following week a video nobody was supposed to see is sitting on a timeline getting refreshed 1 million times a minute. And the woman in the middle of it logs on, puts an ice pack on her neck, tells the chat her head hurts, and says one sentence that basically rewrites the whole story. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. Wait. Back up. Read that again. Real quick, before we open this folder, if you rock with the kind of breakdown that actually reads the paper instead of reacting to the caption, tap the thumb, lock the sub, flip the bell, so the next one doesn't get buried, and ride this whole thing out with us. Because the interesting part is not the part that went viral. Here's the shape of it dry. Johnathan Michael Porter, the one you know as Blueface, was released from a California state facility on Monday, November 3rd, according to Complex, after just under 2 years inside on a probation violation stretch-tied back to his 2023 shooting case. Within about 72 hours of walking out, a clip surfaced on his X account showing his fiancée and mother of his 2 kids, Jaidyn Alexis, in a private moment with a man named Bravo, a Los Angeles rapper who used to be part of Blue's inner circle as an associate and roadside figure. The post went up. The post came down. The internet, of course, had already screenshot it. Then Jaidyn logged on, opened a chat window, and started reading comments out loud. That's the room we're walking into. Let's put the actual quotes on the table before we do anything else with them. No interpretation yet. Just the paper. First one from her live stream. The moment she stops dodging and directly names what happened, per her own broadcast, transcribed and reported by HotNewHipHop. I'm very upset because I am a mother, obviously, and that is definitely something I would never have put out. I would never have done that, so clearly it's out of my control. Read that twice. She's not denying the tape. She's grieving the leak. Then the second beat, same stream, same outlet. It definitely came from his page. So, unless there's a video of somebody else posting it, you can shove that excuse up your ass. That's her locking in the source. She's saying, plainly, that the clip came off Blueface account, and she's not entertaining the I got hacked defense before anyone's even offered it. Almost like she was ready for it. Third quote, and this is the one that reset the whole comment section, also from the stream, also caught by HotNewHipHop. It was revenge. Do I regret it? Absolutely the F, not. No hedge, no softening. She names the motive out loud. Now flip to the other side of the ledger. On Thursday, November 6th, the day after his first post-prison live stream and days before the tape hit, Blueface hit X, and per Complex reportedly wrote that both mothers of his children left me in prison stranded for dead. He allegedly claimed he gave Jaidyn $90,000 before he went in, that he was expecting $30,000 back, and that he never saw it. He also allegedly said he stopped speaking to her early in the sentence over a $50 request she wouldn't send because, per his telling, she said she needed it for gas. $50. For gas. On $90,000. Her side of that, also reported by Complex. She says the financial arrangement changed once his sentence got extended, and she also accused him of sleeping with one of my friends and one of his close friends, BM. 2 accusations, 1 paragraph, both from her. And the 4th exhibit, the emotional live stream itself, the one where he found out. Times of India walked through the clip that originally circulated via the X account at Feared Buck, Blueface scrolling his phone on camera, seeing the allegation, laughing in that way people laugh when they've been hit, and saying on stream, "That's not my B, no more." Then he ends the stream. Then, per the same outlet, the alleged explicit clip goes up on his account and comes down almost as fast. That's the sequence they're reporting. That's the paper. Nobody said the word coincidence yet. Nobody's going to. Now, line the calendar up next to itself and squint, because the pattern reads different once you do. The September statement, his airing out on X about the $90,000, the $50 for gas, the loyalty question, lands 3 days after his release from custody. The tape post lands within the same news cycle as the money statement. The end of stream moment where he says, "That's not my B, no more is the tissue between the two." That's not a story unfolding organically. That's a rollout. Whether it was planned or not, it moves like one. And here's where the money angle stops being gossip and starts being a receipt. Jaidyn Alexis isn't a bystander in the Blueface financial ecosystem. In October 2023, she signed to Bluevision/Columbia Records, a deal Blueface personally brokered and structured, as reported by Yahoo Entertainment and HotNewHipHop. Bluevision is the imprint tied to Longtime. Blueface was the executive fingerprint on getting her in that room. So, when he goes to prison in January 2024, and Fox 11 LA's reporting puts his booking at the Van Nuys jail on January 12, 2024, the person he's leaving $90,000 with isn't just his fiancée. It's an artist he signed, whose deal he shaped, whose revenue stream, at least partially, he's still connected to on paper. That's a commingle bag. That's not a boyfriend-girlfriend Venmo dispute. And it changes the tenor of the "she stole from me" framing entirely, because real talk, if any of that 90,000 touched label advance flows, tour money, royalty pass-throughs, or shared vendor invoices during a 2-year incarceration, "give me my 30 back" is not a text message conversation. That's a forensic accounting conversation. And nobody's had that conversation publicly yet, which is loud. Now watch the manager piece. Bravo. The man in the video isn't a stranger who wandered into her orbit. He's someone HotNewHipHop describes as Blueface's former manager. That's the second time in 12 months a man named as a Blueface manager has ended up at the center of a Blueface scandal. Whack 100 got hit with allegations about mishandled money, per reporting circulating on social. Now Bravo shows up here. That's a pattern about the men Blueface trusts, not a pattern about the women in the story. That distinction matters. Hold on. Let me reread the timing one more time to make sure I'm not stretching it. Release, November 3rd. Money grievance post, on or around November 6th, per Complex. Tape leak, the same news cycle. Her response stream, hours after. Every single beat is inside a window narrow enough to fit in a work week. That's not the shape of pain unfolding. That's the shape of a plan being executed, or a plan collapsing in real time. One of the two. 3 lenses. Small details. Big weight. Watch how she runs the live stream. She's not performing crisis. She's performing composure. She stops mid-sentence to take a call. She jokes about her hair. She thanks people for gifted subs. She tells the chat her head hurts, mentions an ice pack, says her house is in shambles, mentions Vegas. Then, in the middle of that domestic clutter, she drops the line about revenge. That is not a woman ambushed. That is a woman who's had days, maybe longer, to sit with what she was going to say. The casualness is the tell. Somebody blindsided by the biggest scandal of their year does not have their monologue that tight. The post and delete pattern. According to Times of India and multiple secondary aggregators, the explicit clip was uploaded to Blueface X account and pulled shortly after. That deletion window is critical, and here's why. On major platforms, unauthorized intimate imagery is a terms of service violation that removes fast and can trigger account suspension. If you post it and delete it yourself, you eat a warning at worst. If you leave it up, you eat the account. The delete isn't remorse. The delete is damage control. Read the sequence like an operator, not like a heartbroken ex, and it stops looking impulsive. California has one of the more aggressive, non-consensual intimate imagery statutes in the country. Penal Code Section 647J for the so-called revenge porn statute, which, per its own text on state legislative archives, makes it a misdemeanor to distribute an image of an identifiable person's intimate body parts, taken under circumstances where there was a reasonable expectation of privacy, with intent to cause serious emotional distress. Jaidyn is identifiable. The circumstances imply private. The intent question is where a prosecutor lives. And her live stream line, clearly it's out of my control, is not just an emotional statement. That is a woman placing on record, in front of thousands of witnesses, that she did not consent to the distribution. That transcript is discoverable. Whether or not she pursues, it is her call. But that line was set on camera, and that camera is time-stamped. Here's where the outlets split, and the split tells you where the sympathy is landing. The hot new hip-hop framing is Jaidyn forward. Their headline centers her voice. Their pull quotes emphasize her taking control of the narrative. The verbs they use for her, commented, remarked, added, addressed, are neutral to active. The verbs they use for Blueface, shared, posted, deleted, are transactional. That's an editorial hand on the scale, subtle but real. They're not villainizing him. They're just not centering him. The complex piece from the day before flips the camera the other way. His grievances lead the story. Her rebuttal is a lower paragraph. Her accusation of his infidelity, the "one of my friends and one of his close friends BM" line, gets a single sentence at the end. Complex's read of the same 72-hour window is that this is a man airing out disloyalty. Same paper, different frame. Then the third camp, the one running through blog aggregators and TikTok reposts, is running the AI defense angle. That's a callback to earlier in the year when WAC 100 publicly claimed a different set of Blueface-adjacent leaked clips were AI generated. That defense was floated the second the Bravo tape hit. And Jaidyn's stream, per her own words in the transcript, nuked it. She never used the phrase, "it's real." She didn't have to. When she said, "clearly it's out of my control," she confirmed the footage's authenticity without ever validating its release. The AI camp got their oxygen cut in one sentence. Now the countercase. The strongest defense of the Blueface framing, the one comment sections are already running, sounds like this. He was in prison for almost 2 years. She cheated with somebody in a circle. And if you did that to any regular man, he'd have posted it too. That's the argument. And I want to steelman it because it's not a nothing argument. Nobody's saying betrayal doesn't hurt. Nobody's saying his anger isn't real. If the complex reporting on the money is accurate, he's got documented reasons, plural, to feel like the ground moved under him while he was inside. But here's what dismantles it, and it dismantles it with paper, not insult. Distributing an intimate image of the mother of your 2 children, one of whom is old enough to eventually find that image, is not a peer-to-peer betrayal exchange. It's an act with legal consequences in California, platform consequences on X, and public safety consequences for the woman named. His hurt is real. His response is a separate object. And the fact that he deleted it within minutes tells you he knew. The delete is the confession. The post was the mistake. And this is where I'll actually hedge because it's possible somebody else had access to his account. It's possible the clip was queued through a third party. It's possible the whole sequence was messier than the timeline reads. Possible. Not proven. Until the paper says otherwise, though, the account it came from is his, and the deletion pattern reads like a man doing cleanup on his own upload. Everybody's running the same read on this. Man comes home from prison, finds out his fiancée was with somebody in his circle, snaps, posts the tape. Betrayal story. Simple. Broken heart, ugly reaction, tabloid closes the file. That's the mainstream read. Here's the read the mainstream isn't running. This whole cycle is a loyalty economic story, not a heartbreak story. And once you frame it that way, every beat repositions. The public persona Blueface has cultivated for years. The polyamory, the on-stream chaos, the My Two Women framing that predated his sentence. That persona sold loyalty as a currency he controlled the exchange rate on. He decided when Krazian Rock was in, when she was out, when Jaidyn was the primary, when the arrangement was open, on camera, publicly, repeatedly. That was the deal he authored. Now, and this is the seam he goes inside for 2 years, and in his absence the exchange rate flips. Jaidyn signs the Columbia deal he helped set up, which per HotNewHipHop's original report locks her into her own revenue stream. She becomes economically independent from his cash flow in real time, on paper, while he's in a cell. Then she, per her own words on stream, makes a decision with someone in his circle and calls it revenge. Not confusion. Not a mistake. Revenge. That's a woman collecting on a debt she felt was owed. Now, watch the response through that lens. He gets out, and the first big public move isn't celebration. It isn't reconciliation. It's an itemized grievance list about money per complex. 90,000 out. 30 expected back. 50 for gas she wouldn't send. That's not a lover talking. That's a man doing forensics on his own household. He's not saying she broke my heart. He's saying she broke the ledger. And when the tape drops from his account within the same 72-hour window, that's not just anger. That's a man trying to reset the exchange rate. Publicly. Because if the currency was loyalty and hers has been publicly downgraded, then his stock in the arrangement rises back up. Or, at least he thinks it does. Except, and this is where it collapses, she flipped the whole board with one line. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. That is not a woman losing the exchange. That is a woman declaring the currency is no longer in circulation. She's saying the loyalty market he authored is closed. She's out. She's calling revenge revenge. She's told the chat she's off the internet chopping block, off the streaming daily drama beat, and headed to Vegas. Read the transcript again. She talks about JK, about the bag, about being tired, about her kids. She's not asking to be taken back. She's not begging for the tape to be pulled. She's on record saying I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Translation, I'll handle the legal side on my time. And the men? The two men who bookend this? One is a former manager whose only public role in the story is being the other body in the frame. The other is the person whose account distributed the frame. Neither of them speaks with the composure she does on that stream. That's not accidental. That's the shape of who was actually in control when the smoke cleared. 4 sharpened jabs at the mainstream read, delivered dry. 1. A heartbreak story doesn't come with a $90,000 receipt in the second paragraph. That's a business dispute wearing a heartbreak costume. 2. A man who's genuinely broken by what he saw doesn't post the evidence on his own platform. He grieves, then maybe he sues, or he says nothing. The post is not sadness. The post is strategy that misfired. 3. An AI defense doesn't get floated for a video that's real. Somebody in the camp tried to run that play, and Jaidyn's own words shut it down inside 24 hours. That defense being attempted at all is the tell that people around him knew the leak was going to land bad. 4, and this one's almost sympathetic, Blueface, per his own complex reported words, spent 2 years watching the mothers of his children make choices he couldn't control from a cell. That's a real hurt. Nobody's laughing at that part. But the response to that hurt is a separate object from the hurt itself. And the response is what the paper's judging. The take said flat, this isn't a scandal. This is a woman recovering leverage a man tried to take back on the way out of a prison gate. She hit send on the leverage. He hit delete on the post. The paper's already sorted itself. Watch the legal calendar first. Once the shock cycle wears off, the question isn't emotional, it's procedural. California's 647J4 statute doesn't require the alleged victim to press charges for a civil claim to exist, and there's a private right of action attached under civil code that opens the door to damages. Don't be surprised if, inside the next 60 to 90 days, a filing surfaces in either a Los Angeles County Civil Court or federal court, because if any part of the distribution touched interstate platforms, EXA servers, cross-state viewers, federal statutes stack on top of California's. The move to watch isn't the criminal referral. It's the civil complaint. Because a civil complaint puts the $90,000 money question, the one Complex reported him raising, into the same document as the leak question. And once those two questions are in the same filing, discovery gets ugly for whichever side has been telling the loosest version of the money story. Now the wild card. The Columbia/Bluevision side has been quiet, and quiet from a major label imprint in the middle of a story this hot isn't neutrality. It's a decision. Once the dust settles on the initial cycle, watch for one of two moves, either a public distance-taking from the Blueface-authored architecture of Jaidyn's rollout, which would be a business signal that she's being handled independently now, or a very quiet repapering of her deal structure that removes any residual Blueface entanglement. Either move confirms the same underlying reality. The label isn't going to let a headline-adjacent partner threaten a signed artist's runway, especially not one whose singles have already charted independent of the drama. The music business is boring on purpose. Boring is how you survive a news cycle like this. And the residue, the part 5 years from now, when the tabloids have moved on and the algorithm's forgotten who Bravo is. Here's what actually sticks. Jaidyn Alexis, in one live stream on one Friday afternoon, sitting in her house with an ice pack on her neck, executed a piece of public narrative reclamation that industry PR firms charge 6 figures for. She admitted the tape was real. She refused the shame frame. She named the distributor. She called the motive revenge on record without flinching. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She invoiced, and the culture is going to remember that clip longer than it remembers the leak. Because women in her position, famous by proximity, publicly entangled, financially commingled, almost never get to write the ending to their own scandal. She wrote hers in one stream. That's the residue. That's the thing that outlives every headline attached to this week. The prediction I'll stake, and you can check me on it. Within 6 months, Jaidyn Alexis has a bigger streaming week than anything she's had since the Columbia signing announcement. Not because the tape helped her, nothing about a non-consensual leak helps anyone, but because the composure did. The industry rewards artists who survive their own scandal with dignity intact. She just filed that paperwork publicly. So, yeah, the 90,000 that opened this one, that's the number the culture is going to keep asking about long after the tape stops trending. If this is the kind of read that hits your feed different, tap the like, lock the sub, flip the bell, and drop where you land in the comments. We read them. And that's a wrap and receipt case. Court's adjourned. Next one's already loading.